students, we're back. We kind of said that we wanted to also talk about one more essential or two more essential questions, one of which was how does the price of our goods domestically impact whether we are going to be an exporting and importing nation? So let's kind of look at an example. Let's look at, we'll say, the United States, which produces quite a bit of steel. Or maybe we could let's say China. China produces a lot of steel, and there's a reason for that. When we look at the domestic price of steel in China, this is what companies or firms will pay for steel within the country. So this is the local price. However, internationally, steel has become a lot more expensive to produce. The world price of steel, what most countries are paying for steel, represented by the purple line, is higher than what China can produce, higher than the price that China produces steel for domestically. So Chinese firms see that. They see that basically, wow, the world price is higher than our price. And so when they see that they can, sell their steel at a higher price, they want to sell more at a higher price. This is called the law of supply. So what happens is Chinese firms will sell their steel. They'll raise their prices, and as they raise their prices and increase their output, they will produce more. However, as they raise their prices and increase the quantity supplied, domestically, people don't want to buy as much because the price is higher. So what kind of happens there is you can kind of see when the world supply and world price is higher than the domestic price, firms see those high prices, and they're attracted to those high prices. They increase output, increase prices until it matches the world supply price. At that high price domestically, you can see domestic quantity demanded is much lower. So, they will basically sell between 0 and the first red line domestically. However, the rest they will sell as exports to other countries that are willing to pay those world prices. So just note, if the world price and ultimately world supply curve is higher than the domestic price, meaning it's more expensive for the rest of the world, will probably become an exporting nation. Conversely, we'll kind of hold on. We'll talk about this tomorrow. I'm going to get through this real quick. Let's skip to imports. If we have if our price before trade is higher than that of the world price, then that means the people within our country are paying a higher price than the rest of the world is paying for that good or service. And so other countries can produce that good for a lower price. That lower price is represented by the world supply curve here. And you can kind of see that at that lower price, domestic firms are not going to be able to compete with that low world price. And so what happens is if we open up our markets to international trade, and other firms from other countries are able to supply our goods and services, or their goods and services in our country, the domestic quantity demanded will be higher. So you can kind of see that first dot and the red line on the right going down to domestic quantity demand. At that world price, our citizens are demanding that quantity at that price. However, domestic firms can't compete, and so because they can't compete, they're going to have to reduce output and lower their prices so they can compete. And so what will happen is domestic quantity supplied will change from the equilibrium quantity supplied to domestic quantity supplied, shown by the little red line, dotted red line, and dot on the left. And so what basically happens, domestic production is from zero to domestic quantity supplied, and the rest that is supplied is basically called imports. And so this is, basically what happens if the price is below the domestic price. So hopefully that helps shed some light on whether a country will be an importing or exporting nation. One other thing that we want to know for this lesson is something on tariffs, and I just want to briefly go over this. Imports can be kind of a pain. And how imports, why are they a pain? Well, think about this. If a country buys lots and lots of imports, that's a leakage. That's money that is flowing from our country into other countries. And sometimes countries don't want that. Sometimes they don't want imports for us to be having lots and lots of imports. And that being the case, they sometimes want to discourage those imports. And so they put what's called a tariff on a certain good or service from other countries. And so what that will do is, we'll kind of look at how the tariff will work. But before we do, this is kind of referring to our last example. You can see this country here, the domestic Cheeto market. Clearly, the domestic price of Cheetos is much higher than what the rest of the world can produce Cheetos for. So this country is importing Cheetos. They're importing a lot of Cheetos. The quantity is from Q1 to Q4. That being the case, we want to reduce the imports. And so what a country will do, they'll put a tax on it. And as you could probably remember, a tax will shift supply to the left. Well, in this case, it's going to shift the world supply. It's going to shift it up. So you can see initially we're importing Q1 to Q4, but we put a tariff on these goods, and that will raise the price and cause imports to shrink from Q1 to Q4 to Q2 to Q3. Now all those imported goods are going to be a higher price, and they're also going to be, because it's a higher price, the quantity demanded at that higher price is going to be Q3. Also, because domestic firms see that the price has gone up, are willing to basically produce more at a higher price, and so domestic firms will basically increase from the 0 point, or the point on the far left into Q1 to the 0 point or far left point in Q2. And so domestic production rises and the amount of imports decrease. So just note that a tariff is a tax on imported goods, and it decreases imports. Anyway, I hope that helps you answer the few questions that you have to answer. And anyway, also if you're a little bit confused, you can look at the book too, and you can ask all the questions you want tomorrow. And again, maybe just think about, can I answer those 3 essential questions after this video lecture? All right, have a great night, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye.